What would American capitalism be without the world's greatest marketing and advertising? It's so fundamental to the foundation of the modern American identity, most of us don't even contemplate a reality free of aggressive and often nearly advertising schemes. The emergence of lifestyle branding, the idea that you can define yourself by what you buy rather than what you do, is a uniquely 20th century invention that uses ideas from psychology to connect consumer goods to evolutionary survival. In other words, his job is to trick you into buying garbage because you think it'll keep you from dying sooner. Of course, no group is spared from the desires of Madison Avenue advertising firms because they want you to buy. The only thing that's colorblind in America is money. No act is too off-putting for any major brand that wants to make money and wishes to claim a new demographic as their own. Black men, 18 to 30, cleverly place a pair of Jordans next to your product. White suburban moms who voted for Joe Biden make a passing reference to Toni Morrison in the commercial. Asian parents of teenage children just mention the Ivy League. Everything I just mentioned is gross in its simplicity, but just look at how we're marketed to and tell me if I'm wrong. Yet nobody really seems to talk about it beyond any type of criticism about American capitalism. Bill Hicks did a bit on his special Revelations, and Roy Wood Jr. did a joke about the subject of this video. McDonald's shameless, rather garish brand marketing towards Black Americans. The question to answer in this video is whether the American approach is consciously doing this, or is this a result of advertising in a culture obsessed with race and identity? How does a brand signal their awareness of any social issue, be it race, climate, or gender, and retain some sense of authenticity, particularly when their business has literally nothing to do with these? Which brings us to the company that never quite seems to get it right, McDonald's. After the height of the civil rights movement in the late 60s, McDonald's, like every other major American company, attempted to be overly inclusive. Yes, they had good intentions, but they didn't quite stick the landing. An article by Lanika Cruz in The Atlantic explains just how clumsily McDonald's handled the transition toward a culturally integrated America, where she details McDonald's distasteful and nearly offensive use of G-dropping in advertising copies. Really? Dinner timing? Any timing? Literally nobody has ever said that, ever. And they even had the nerve to add, there's no tipping, because once Black people find out we don't need to tip, why wouldn't we be in a hurry to go down to McDonald's? What's even more interesting is that white ads at the time featured none of this language. Charlton McIlwain, an associate professor at New York University, specialized in race and media, and stated that these types of ads are tone deaf. He described this as the outcome of advertisers trying to do the right thing, but not necessarily knowing what that meant. He said that white-dominated ad agencies lack familiarity with Black people and Black communities, which leads to ads that rely on racial stereotypes because they lack any other information about us. The article goes on to quote executives from dedicated Black advertising agencies like Neil Drossman, who said, "What differentiated the good agencies of that period from the big bad ones, the great majority, was a respect for the target and a desire to understand it." While Drossman is correct, one has to be aware that the big agencies were and still are run by the white executives of the world. How could they possibly understand something they have no familiarity with? Advertisers know that Black people are more likely to buy a product when they see themselves reflected in those said advertisements. However, this isn't just exclusive for Black people. Any race that sees themselves in commercials are more likely to buy that product. However, when McDonald's and other companies began inserting more Black and brown people, the agencies began to worry that their products would be branded as Black, thus losing their white customers in the process. Professor at Princeton University Center of African American Studies, Imani Perry, said in 2014, "McDonald's direct marketing to African Americans has always troubled me, largely because so many African Americans live in urban areas surrounded by fast food restaurants and with limited access to fresh produce and unprocessed food. It seemed to add insult to injury to present this business as having any investment or interest in African American history and culture." Today's ad campaigns aren't nearly as crass, but they're still segregated. Roy Wood Jr.'s bit in No One Loves You explores how McDonald's targets Black customers through specific means. McDonald's has a commercial where all they do is recap everything they did for Black people that year. No other company does that. No other company that I can think of has the Negro recap commercial, and I'm not talking about the Black McDonald's commercial. Some motherfucker with a nugget dancing. This is a totally separate commercial. There's no music. They're not trying to sell you anything. It's no crazy angles or moves. It's just flipping burgers, working the grill, and then you hear a voice from the commercial. Did you know that McDonald's and the United Negro College Fund gave $40 million to send these kids to college? If it wasn't for McDonald's, people like Terrence here might be still robbing your ass. It's brilliant marketing, so the next time a black gets knocked out at McDonald's, they'll just be like, hey, we sent Terrence to college. Wood goes on to explain the significance of McDonald's being the title sponsor of the most important high school basketball game in the country. In the actual commercial, which Wood calls the Negro Recap, McDonald's doesn't try to be authentically black to connect with black customers. They're more subtle, in effect saying, we're not a part of this struggle, but we recognize there is one and want to help. Where McDonald's fails, however, is in the same way Drossman said they did in the 70s. And it's not like there aren't brands that do get it right. USAA and Ford are both major American companies that included black folks in their ad campaigns as regular people. Just normal black folks doing what black folk do, which is all anyone wants, really. The rest of the world seems to not be obsessed with leveraging every opportunity to gain market research to sell a product. They express the broad aesthetic of ideals that are relevant to target a demographic, but they don't do it in such a way that is obviously designed to speak only to you and people like you. There's a more general everyman quality to the advertising that's actually more inviting and probably more effective. In the two commercials overlaid here, notice that the actors aren't extraordinarily attractive, and the lives they lead are rather mundane. If anything, the purpose of this ad is to say, life's hard, but we can make it a little bit easier. They're actually selling the product itself as a value-added proposition, not a lifestyle in which the product is just a small part. Contrast that with Citibank's new Black Wall Street commercial, which conveniently just came out for Black History Month, and the difference is obvious. The ad features a famous person, Brian Henry from Atlanta, to do Citi's virtue signaling for the With Pride, without mentioning the actual financial benefits a black business will receive by banking with them. No mention of loan terms, interest rates, monthly fees, volume discounts, nothing. It's nice to see that at least some brands realize black people want the same thing from their products as everybody else. For example, one McDonald's commercial for black people said, on the real side, kids can really dig getting down at McDonald's, while the white ad says, Jimmy Mother knows McDonald's hamburgers are 100% beef, Jimmy just knows they're good. Nowadays, black and brown people are unfairly targeted when it comes to these ads. According to Medical News Today, fast food restaurants like McDonald's, Domino's, and Taco Bell spent over $1.5 billion on commercial ads to target black children. Black and Hispanic youth watch 75% more fast food ads than their white counterparts, while no healthy items were shown on Spanish language channels. This study was taken from 2019, and it's clear nothing has really changed. Thankfully though, we now have the knowledge of healthier alternatives, no thanks to advertisements. Whole foods, smoothies, and vegan options are more talked about amongst black communities. Now that we know about these products, the only problem now is getting those healthier options into our neighborhoods.